Can I fill you in on some business happenings in the surf world while you were gone?
Yes.
As reported on Stab Magazine, just I think this morning, Nike is making a comeback into the surfing world. So Nike had, I want to say it was 7 or 8 years ago, they made a foray into surfing with a brand that they called Nike 6.0, and they basically sponsored all of the best athletes on the men and the women's side, threw a ton of money around, and within 2 years pulled out. They also purchased Hurley. I don't know if they purchased Hurley during that 2 years or if it was prior. And I think ultimately what their decision became was, we don't need two separate entities in the surf space. I think probably behind that decision for Nike was, surfing's not big enough. Like, even if we dominate this market, it's not as big as baseball, basketball, tennis, all these other markets that we're in. And so it's really not worth our time. But we do have this Hurley property that does dominate the space, and we can kind of shift all of our assets in terms of athletes over
Yeah.
into the Hurley team and still dominate. So they basically
They were cannibalizing her. They were cannibalizing one of their own brands, and they're like, "This is stupid. Why are we doing this?" They had purchased Hurley prior
it was
to them going
prior.
into the space. Yeah.
Okay. So that all happened. That's old news. But the fact that they're now they sold Hurley, obviously, that was a big news story in the last year. They sold Hurley to Bluestar Alliance. The Hurley family themselves have all left the company and are now involved in a holding company, essentially, that is, they've now purchased Simple Shoes as a shoe brand. They are backing John Florence in his own clothing brand, and there's a lot more to come, I'm sure, from them. But meanwhile, on the side, Nike now is apparently making a comeback into the surf space. What are your thoughts on Nike getting back into surfing?
Well, you're right. I mean, so Nike, apparently they've already leveraged some space in the big time surf retail, specialty retail stores. So they have the clout to just march in and go, "Hey, we want some space," and they've received that. Um, will they sign a team rider? Will they simply, as I mentioned, leverage their way into retail to really what is, as you know, the ever expanding vulnerable adult learner demographic, which has been loyal to Nike for decades. And they'll simply buy their Nike at Jack's Surf Shop instead of at Target.
Well, then why would Nike do it then? If Nike knew that they already had that client?
I'll tell you why. Because I feel like Nike can just go, "Hey, the surf retail, specialty surf shop retail space is super weak right now. Let's just roll the dice and let's try to get 15% market share first year. Let's just see if we can do it. And then year 2 and 3, let's see if we can get to 20% market share, maybe 25% market share. And what do we've got to lose?"
So I understand that part, but your initial thing of, there's a loyal Val who's already buying Nike at Target, so now they'll just buy it there instead. I'm saying that isn't the strategy. I would argue, you asked, will they sponsor an athlete? 1,000%. That's what Nike does. They're all about athletes, leveraging the athlete to do a line of product with that athlete. So there's never been a better time to hire or to sponsor surf athletes. Julian Wilson doesn't have a sticker on his board. Kelly Slater doesn't have a shoe sponsor. John Florence is available. I mean, presuming he's not.
Gabe Medina's the guy.
Gabe Medina has 30 stickers on his board. He doesn't need another sticker. Carissa Moore, Stephanie Gilmore, none of them has shoe sponsors. You can come in.
You're Nike, which guy do you want? That's what they're thinking. They don't give a shit about how many stickers you
have. Idolo.
Maybe it's Idolo. I feel like Gabe's already got connections with Nike through his sort of highbrow crowd that he runs with, like soccer stars and shit.
Well, Felipe already has connections with them because he's in the Hurley camp, and that was all tangled up for a while. So there's definitely going to be overlap.
Yeah, there. I think you wash all of that away. I think Nike just looks at it like, look, Who do we grab? I don't
I
give a
think
shit.
they grabbed
Hurley, I
Idolo
don't give
makes
a shit.
Idolo makes the most
Maybe it
sense
is
to me.
Idolo.
He's
Okay,
the
I'm down
world
with
champ.
that.
Yeah.
I'm totally down. I could see that happening. Just imagine Jack's a huge window of Idolo and a Nike 6.0, and you're a vulnerable adult learner, and you're like, I want to shop at the surf shops now. And you go to the surf shops, and there's Nike, and you're like, killer! I've been loyal to this brand forever. Now I'm in.
It's no longer 6.0, by the way. They're
Yeah.
just sticking with the regular Nike. But I think the vulnerable adult learner doesn't care about Idolo. I think they could pick John and Idolo. And John appeals to the Patagonia demographic, and Idolo appeals to the youth demographic. And that covers all of their bases.
What I'm arguing is that the vulnerable adult learner, you're right, he doesn't care about Idolo, but he goes into the surf shop and he sees Nike. And he's like, look, there's some pro athlete. I don't know, Idolo. I don't even know who he is. I'm a vulnerable adult learner. But I know Nike, and I've been loyal to Nike, and I'm going to buy Nike. And the reason that they sign Idolo is so that they can kind of get a little bit more leverage in the surf shops and kind of go, oh, look, what's $2 million a year to us? Nothing.
Well, that's the other thing is there's never been a better time to sponsor surf athletes because they're willing to work for 1/20th of what the NBA star is going to ask for. They're dirt cheap. You can come in and throw money around for 5 years and get out cleaner than you would in any other sport. I think honestly, Slater could be an interesting pick. I mean, I could see them doing with Slater what they did with Jordan or anybody. Like, I could see a Slater shoe. Would you wear a Slater shoe?
I wouldn't, but I could see it, and I wouldn't not wear a Slater shoe. But I totally agree with you. I mean, my feeling is if a guy on a wave storm walks into Jack's surf shop and he's got Ruka, he's got Salty Crew, he's got Billabong, Quicksilver, Hurley maybe, or Nike, I'm just going to buy Nike because I don't even know who these other brands are. I didn't grow up with these other brands. They don't mean anything to me, but Nike is Jordan.
That person would buy the Nike if Nike had some authentic athlete associated with it.
They do. Michael Jordan.
No.
That's my point. Yeah.
No, that guy on the Wave Storm.
Athlete.
That guy on the Wave Storm needs to see John in that advertising, or Kelly is honestly, Kelly's kind of the best example. If that guy walked in and saw Kelly is co-signing Nike, he would then jump on board.
I agree with you. But my point is the reason that they're loyal to Nike, it doesn't matter if it's Julian or if it's Idolo or if it's Kelly. It's going to be a surfer. And I walk in from a vulnerable adult learner and I'm like, cool, they've signed us pro surfer.
Yeah.
And they immediately subconsciously are like Michael Jordan. Nike is Michael Jordan.
Well, yeah, but it
doesn't matter which pro surfer it is. It's cool that they got a pro surfer and they need to get a pro surfer, but it doesn't matter.
Well, that's my point though. They can't do it without a pro surfer because if that guy just walks in and thinks Jordan, he's not walking into a surf shop to buy a Jordan associated product. If he walks in and sees a familiar brand, like you're saying that he already trusts and knows.
I totally agree.
Yeah, but he needs Kelly to co-sign it for him, or he needs John to co-sign it for him.
I don't even think they do, though. I think you could go in without – I'm not saying this is the smart play, but I'm thinking you could go in with just Nike, don't sign a pro athlete, just have Nike board shorts, and the guy's like, shit, I'll just buy Nike. Like, they're not – when you're 30 years old, you're not that – like, this isn't a youth play. This is a youth play.
I think that there's a youth play here, but – that then kind of eliminates Kelly from the conversation. I think Idolo and John become their marquee athletes at this point. I think like what they did with Jordan was ride Jordan's ascent to fame and help certainly make it happen. But it's too late in Kelly's trajectory of his career to really make that analogous. Whereas I mean, or even go younger, picking a Jack Robinson or somebody like that could be the other, or dude, Jackson Dorian.
Maybe, but I sense that this isn't a youth play. I sense that this is we have loyal Nike people that have been wearing Nike since their friggin' fraternity softball league 15 years ago. And Nike's just ubiquitous. It's just
if that's true, then they don't need to get into surf. If that is all true, then
no, but
why would
50% of surf market share? Maybe here, I'm going to throw this weird one out at you. Maybe there's a VP there that's like, let's stick it to Bob Hurley. Let's stick it to Can Do Incorporated. Let's go in
Dude,
his own backyard.
if this
Now,
was
that's a stretch. That's a stretch.
if
there
this
is
was
such a guy, he should
punitive,
be fired. He should not work at Nike any longer. But is there a
Um,
resentment there? I do
that'd be
know
amazing.
they see weak surf retail space, and it's true because it is weak.
Yeah, but again, their whole strategy is to work with athletes. It always has been. I'll take this one step further. For me, this is the last horse of the apocalypse. Like this is not an indicator of, oh yeah, a bunch of money is going to be flying around in surfing anymore.
No,
If this
totally
isn't,
agree. I agree with you.
this is an indicator of, yeah, remember when Hurley got bought by Bluestar and there was an Oprah televangelist running the World Surf League? Well, then Nike came in and completely did a cannonball, and all of the water splashed out of Kelly Slater's tub in the middle of California. Like that is what's happening right now. This is the final horse of the apocalypse.
I agree with that. And why is that? There's just simply no core brands. There's no such thing as a core surf brand. It just doesn't exist.
The fact that you and I just spent 20 minutes trying to cobble together a marketing strategy for this company that has nothing to do with surfing and trying to find an athlete who is willing to sell their soul to shill it to the guy on a wave storm walking into the corner surf shop in Huntington Beach is insane. It could be the low point of spit ever in the last 7 or 8 years.
It's a high point.
It's insane. But it is, again, this is we're in 2020 right now. This is the most apocalyptic year ever. We're being ravaged by a virus. Our state is burning to the ground. And the surf industry is completely, this is insane.
Well, look, you and I have said this, and I still agree with, I still hold this to be true, that the most core brand, both inside and outside of the surf space, is Patagonia. And they don't really even care about the surf space. They kind of got a little bit of an inkling in it. They're kind of in it, but it has more to do with their brand vision and their brand visionary and Yvon Chouinard that carries my loyalty.
Yeah.
Than some guy that's like, oh, let's make some, eco-friendly board shorts and blah, blah. And it's like, dude, sounds like a scam.
Well, in other news or tangential news, Julian Wilson is suing Hurley for the $1.5 million annual salary that they owe him. He was on contract with them, I forget when he signed, but it was certainly prior to them selling to Bluestar. And part of that contract stated that he has to compete every year. And in 2020, there's no competition. So they are reneging on their $1.5 million salary, and he's suing them for it. He's basically saying even though the contract states that I have to compete, this is a unique scenario where there's a pandemic and the WSL isn't running the events that I'm supposed to compete in. So you guys still owe me my salary. And apparently they're going to go to court.
Wow.
Or not. Maybe they won't go to court. Maybe they'll just pay him out or pay him a lesser amount. I think John settled for $2 million out of the 12 that he was owed over the next 6 years. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So John basically said, look, I'm not going to be forced for the next 6 years to cross every T and dot every I and probably go to, autograph signings in Virginia Beach. How about we both walk away amicably? And he did for apparently $2 million. So Julian might find himself in a similar situation. I don't know how many years are left on Julian's contract, but it's 1.5 a year plus bonuses.
So bringing this back to Nike a little bit, because you're bringing up something that I think we should dive into a little more, is who's the guy? And so you think that Nike might sign a guy, and I agree with that. And you're thinking it would be Idolo is your best bet. I don't think Idolo's that marketable.
I think John, if I was at Hurley, if I was at Nike, I would argue for John.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So number one on your list is John.
John's got 2 world titles. John's got 2 Eddies. John has really kind of diverse, interests. you know, between sailing and fishing and photography and filmmaking and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then furthermore, John John's legacy is sewn into Hawaii's DNA. And that is steadfast. That's evergreen. Whereas Idolo, the Brazil legacy and where it fits into the surfing world is a little more trend sensitive. And certainly they'll be surfing there probably forever from this point on, but it doesn't have the history that Hawaii has. It doesn't have the marquee waves that Hawaii has. Hawaii is important to surfing, and John John is their ultimate representative at this point, you know? So I think that is worth more.
Do you think that Nike, after 2 or 3 years, will either see them own the space, like be like 30% of market share or more in surf retail, or they're like, you know what, it was a good experiment, we rolled the dice, we're out, we lost a little bit of money, so what? You think in 3 years we'll know?
It's too early to say. I'm more concerned about that what I said earlier is that it actually is the final straw that breaks the credibility of surfing. So I could see from this, like they come in, they dump a bunch of money in, they procure athletes, and it elbows out the smaller brands and further kind of fractures whatever sales Rourke was getting at, or Brixton was getting at Huntington Surf and Sport.
Yeah,
they're going to lose to Hurley, or I'm sorry, to Nike. And so there's going to be fewer small brands competing for less space, and a couple of giant Walmart and Amazon taking up the vast majority of market share. And which is actually, it could be a good thing. It certainly breaks the industry. And then, by the way, side note, the WSL goes out of business. So there's no more professional tours. There's fewer brands, like authentic kind of brands. So that is the last course of the apocalypse. But the good thing is this is now a resetting. So you and I still need surfboards. We need wetsuits. So we can get our Need Essentials still, because Need Essentials isn't going to be affected by that. And we can still get our surfboards because individual board builders are the most core surf brands, period. And they're not going to be affected by this. And you and I can still go surfing, just like we have throughout COVID and whatever else. And so there's an opportunity to reset. And for the most authentic brands like Need Essentials or whoever else to come in and just make a small business. They don't need those guys. They're never going to make millions of dollars off of their business, but they're going to provide for their families, and they're going to provide a good quality product at a competitive price. And you and I won't be buying Nike, but the middle America dude or the guy on the wave storm going into the corner retailer in big cities, maybe they do buy Nike, you know? But I think that
I'll buy Nike. I'll absolutely. I'd buy Nike right now. I'll buy Nike.
I stopped buying Nike years ago.
Oh, did you? You have
why would you buy Nike?
Nice shoes. They got comfortable shoes.
They have terrible shoes. Their shoes fall
apart. Am I a shoe aficionado? I just put the shoes on there.
Well, notice your Nikes will fall apart in half the amount of time that any other shoe that you buy will.
I don't wear shoes.
Well, there you go. So you wear Nike sandals?
No, I don't. My point is, I'm not against Nike. Maybe I should be. Maybe I need to be slapped around. Maybe I need to be socially woke.
I'm anti-Nike.
And by the way, I don't mean to say that I go out looking for Nike. Like, I bet I don't own a pair of Nikes. Actually, I do. I own one pair of Nikes. I bought them, like, I don't know, 8 years ago at a fine men's store where you would buy like a blazer. And, but I mean, I have Pumas. I think my golf shoes are Pumas. I have Vans. I have like Tevas. I have a wide variety of shoe wear is what I mean. I'm not like loyal to Nike, but I wouldn't not buy Nike. I wouldn't go into a surf shop and go, oh, they're not a surf brand. And part of that's my demographic. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I stopped buying Nike, I'd say 10, 15 years ago, simply because the shoes would fall apart.
Huh, well.
They're poorly made as compared to other shoes I was buying. But yeah, I mean, I see opportunities here for core brands to reconnect with consumers. I also see you wearing Slater sandals at this time next year.
No.
Slater golf shoes, even.
Hey,
The problem is Outer Known is owned by the Caring Group, which also owns Puma. So maybe Slater would have a conflict of interest there.
yeah.
But I
Probably.
think he would.
I don't think it's Slater. I don't think it's Slater.
I mean, the thing is, they are big in golf too. Nike's huge in golf, and there's carryover, obviously, with Slater.
Puma's big in golf.
Yeah.